Hello everybody, welcome to the Eternal card breakdown. My name is Pocho, and today we are going to be talking about all the new spoilers from Defiance, which releases on Thursday. If you thought it released on Wednesday, you are incorrect. It was an announcement on the Xbox One page, but I think that they had it like a little bit too close to what probably got that information ahead of time, and it seems like, yeah, no, we're going to be releasing on Thursday, so on the 13th, that'll be in 2 days, and yeah, I think we will be really excited to play then, because I'm actually really glad that it's happening on Thursday, because that is my day off. I will be streaming all day and having myself a blast with all of these fancy new Defiance cards. Hopefully we'll build something cool in the first day, but yeah, at the very least we're gonna have some fun drafts and play around with some cool things and just try weird jank and delightful ridiculousness. Speaking of weird jank, we have this card, Talir's Unwinding, which sacrifices a unit to shuffle each player's hand and void into their deck. Each player draws 7 cards. This features the art from the Defiance tournament, or rather like the Tops 32. I noticed this art in wallpaper form. It is just gorgeous. This might be the prettiest piece of Eternal art that I've actually seen. It is just such a good looking card. Like, this doesn't do it justice, but yeah, it's really fancy. I hope that the wallpaper prints out soon, because it is just a really exceptional card in that respect. So this is an Aurelian card in Time, Primal, and Shadow, and we're gonna have to start getting used to calling it Aurelian, because I'm pretty sure that's the name that's gonna stick. But yes, it is voidbound and sacrifices a unit to shuffle each player's hand and void into their deck. Each player draws 7 cards, so basically it is a full reset in the sense of you get to completely refresh each player's hand, and also you get to shuffle everything in their hand and void into their deck, which means that you shut down any void recursion, things like Kaifus and Vara, and at the same time you are refreshing your pile of cards and you're refreshing your opponent's pile of cards. It could be okay in that respect. I think overall this card doesn't look like you want to play it in a ranked scenario or a draft scenario without a very specific reason. If you are very down on cards and your opponent still has a lot of cards up, then of course you can get card advantage out of it, but you do have to spend 7 to do so, and then once you spend 7, your opponent of course has a hand full of cards to punish you with. We've seen cards like this before. They don't typically work out terribly well. Ancient of the Ice Caves is fairly hard to play, although it is a unit-based version of this effect that is a little bit harder, because if your opponent actually is going to be threatened by it, they're typically going to kill Ancient of the Ice Caves, so you never really see the card when it's good, you just see the effect when it's bad. That being said, this is not like an amazing effect in terms of power. Like, you can do some really ridiculous things with it. It's very fun to play. Like, this is the kind of like Lumen Reclaimer shenanigans that allow you to just reset and make awesome things happen, and like really sort of just absolutely capitalize on some pretty crazy stuff. And at 7, like, that's close enough that I think you might be able to get some power out of it in a very specific scenario. But I would say that this card is not for generalized play. It's just for particular control decks that are really happy to just empty out their hands and then play Talir's Unwinding to refresh their hands. Or if you are like really set on somehow like using your void or your deck as a resource source, and you are depleting your deck very quickly, then this is a card that gives you that Lumen Reclaimer type effect while also allowing you to shuffle up on gas. Like, we have an Invoke the Waystones deck that kind of likes that, but I would say that it doesn't like Talir's Unwinding, because again, like, this is a card that refreshes your opponent's hand, and that's not usually great for you if you're playing for card advantage. That being said, like, if you can fulfill both of those requirements, if you are both looking to exhaust your hand and looking to exhaust your deck in very short order to achieve some sort of short-term goal, then Talir's Unwinding resets the clock and basically makes everything bad happen all over again. It's also a great way to just murder your opponent with Black Iron Manacles, but there are a lot of great ways to murder your opponent with Black Iron Manacles, and none of them are good. Nonetheless, I do think that this card is pretty interesting. I'm glad that it's voidbound. Obviously, it would just be monstrous if it was not voidbound. You could infinitely shuffle your deck and bad things would happen all the time, but it's nice to have a Warp World style effect that just like is fun and ridiculous. This is a fancy card full of fancy things. Not tournament playable, probably not a draft legendary, but I like it nonetheless, and it is also just gorgeous. The art in this set is just out of the park. Let's talk about another card that I actually do think might be good. Etched Monolith. Your units have charge, pay 10 and sacrifice to have your health become 25. 10 to completely reset your health, probably not that awful of a cost in a Xenon-style deck like Mask of Torment, where you are specifically trying to not get murdered and try to actually gain a bunch of life. You can also do some interesting shenanigans with this, such as, of course, like basically raise your health up. I'm not sure if it actually gains you health, but I'm guessing that it does, so you could probably use it for some big life force effects. We will see about that. In general, there isn't an Eternal card yet that changes your health from one thing to another and actually like has it be damage or not be damage or life gain. So it's quite possible that you can trigger something like Xenon Life Speaker off of this and basically just do a ridiculous amount of damage in a single turn. The thing that's more interesting about this to me is that it gives all of your units charge, and that is a very powerful effect on a relic. There's a reason this card costs 5, because like once you have charge on all of your units, you're playing cards like Shadowlands Tyrant and Worldbearer Behemoth and Amili and of course Jotun Feastcaller. You're playing Kaifus with charge, you're playing Vara with charge, you're playing lots of different life stealers with charge. Basically every big huge unit in the game really benefits from having charge. Not all of them, but a very large portion of them are actually really happy to have charge because it means they have instant impact on the board and they can very quickly take care of your opponent. So this is the kind of like control card that I really like, where you get to just make a bunch of your other stuff into a much more dangerous threat, and your opponent just has to answer that, or else like these cards get very scary very quickly. In a similar vein to like New Tomorrow, this is the kind of thing where you're paying a lot for a gradual payoff, but like the gradual payoff is really fun and exciting and it's interesting to play and it leads to like really fun play patterns. I like Etched Monolith a lot. This is one of my favorite cards out of the new set. It does some really cool things, and then like it also has a reset, which you can just basically like if you're in trouble, you can use this card to get yourself back to basically a better situation in a more mid-rangey setup. It also means that if you are playing 4 Etched Monoliths, which you probably shouldn't be, but if you are, you have something that you can at least do with them that will help you out a little bit. So, you know. This card is interesting. I like it as a sideboard card a lot. Like, you can just play this off of an Aurelian Merchant immediately, and then you can start using Worldbearer Behemoths and all of your other nonsense. If you play Great Parliament off of this, you just win. Time doesn't have reach, so Etched Monolith is a way to give all of your cards reach and make it so that you can just have everything with flying and everything with, like, a big old pile of nonsense be, like, ridiculous. This is good in Overwhelm decks. This is good in flying decks. This will probably be good in Relics Matters decks, and like this card like looks like it's just gonna be a blast to play. I'm so excited about this one. This is just a cool card, and yeah, as a rare, yeah, I'd play it in draft. Ranked wise, I'm just I'm down. I'm totally down. Okay, Nika the Freescaler. 3/3 pledge. When an enemy spell is played directly on Nika, she deals 3 damage to the enemy player. This is usually an okay effect. Like, it does mean that this card is hard to interact with. In a mono fire deck, that feels pretty satisfying. You can pay 3 to double Nika's strength this turn. That's not an ultimate. She can just do that every time. So, yeah, and it's not once per turn either. You can just double her strength over and over and over and over again until she is 99.99 if you, or a 999/999 if you are so inclined, or rather, sorry, 999/3. Anyways, yeah, no, so this card can get ridiculous very quickly, especially if it has like other ways to get double damage or overwhelm or all of those shenanigans. I would say that the overall payoff for this card is a little bit difficult, but obviously there's a reason this card is like triple red, because it's a very powerful effect if it's not. Since it's not very easy to splash, I'd say this card mostly just belongs in mono red. Maybe you can find a place for her in a Stone Scar deck or some other deck that really wants to just get very aggressive very early. But the fact that the card does not have charge in and of itself, I'm a little bit worried about it as far as like what kind of value it has. Certainly it's a good way to sink power into an interesting unit. If you have ways of just like exhausting your opponent's stuff, which like Mind Fire, Cinder Yeti, there's plenty of different ways that you can actually get Nika across. So if you're also doing that plus like End of the Barrel plus Spark or something like that, Nika's an interesting choice. This card looks really fun, and it's kind of annoying to kill, and it's so scary that you're kind of inclined to kill it. I think there's a lot of hard choices that sort of result from its play pattern, and whether those are going to lead to a good card is an interesting one. It does give your opponent plenty of choices as far as killing it. Like, I think it's pretty easy to kill, but it's a scary enough card that you might actually be able to get them to do a lot of self-harm, which, yeah, I mean, some damage to them is probably what you want. That's probably not the term I was looking for, but yeah, self-damage. Good stuff. Anyways, Davia, Lithrai, Raid Leader. Oh, this one has very, very big art for some reason. Well, I guess it's like super high quality. If only we had this for the Talir card, because yeah. No, I'm so down. Anyways, Davia, Lithrai, Raid Leader. It says, once per turn, you may pay 5 and discard a card to play 2/2/1 Dark Elves, and has the empower your elves get +1 strength this turn. So we have serious elf tribal, like we have elf ball tribal, in fact. This is a pretty simple 2-drop that can do a pretty cool thing once you are all set up, but is mostly a 3/2 for 2 most of the time, and also makes all of your other elves ridiculous. All of that seems fine. Like, this is good for like aggressive, scary elves. I am looking forward, as always, to seeing what the Lithrai are about. Hopefully we'll see some stories about them. But yeah, like, as far as things go, like, I'm okay with this card. I'm not particularly interested in elf tribal overall, just because elves is, you know, a faction that has never really interested me in like a fantasy perspective. But that's just me. Like, this card looked pretty mechanically interesting. Like, it plays some dark elves. Those are always fun, and like the empower ability is very, very strong. Like, you have to discard the card to get the dark elves, which is kind of fascinating. But I would say that overall, like, this is a reasonable card in terms of what it does for aggro, and the fact that there are some really, really good top-end elf cards that like really, really kind of not only bring back Davia, but also like play back those dark elves if you need to. You can get a very big ball of elves going very quickly, and they will constantly recur from the void. The sort of elf feel is very Feln in the sort of Haunting Scream sense, and the sort of like cheap, aggressive, constantly recurring, just really, really like ambitious and voids focused, and yeah, really satisfying in that respect. So yeah, this card looks like it's going to contribute to a very, very aggressive elf strategy, and yeah, it's mechanically interesting. There's a lot of cool stuff going on with it, but yeah, overall it's just a interesting shadow card for fun tribal. Okay, Rejection. Negate an enemy spell. The enemy player discards all copies from their hands and deck. Rejection can't be negated. Obviously, this is just a control player's dream. Does a lot of cool things. Island is right in the middle of it and looking fancy. Again, the art in Defiance is just good. So yeah, there are a lot of different versions of this card, sort of cranial extraction style. This one's really good. Like, this is something where you get to deny something, and you get to deny it forever. You also get to force your opponent to discard cards, which can be very good. In a control versus control matchup, this is the card to pick for your market. Like, I think it's just really, really strong in that respect. You don't usually want 4 copies of it, but there are a couple of really, really go-tall control decks that are probably going to be pretty happy to have Rejection. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for just saying that your opponent can't cast Channel the Tempest. Like, that's something that I think is quite reasonable, and the fact that it can't be negated or stolen or really like have anything bad happen to it means that you can shut down a lot of counter strategies that are only 1 card and only a 4 of in your opponent's deck, and I think there's plenty of different places to put those. Big Elysian control decks are going to be really, really happy with this card. Primal Time Justice is going to be pretty happy with this card. I almost think this card should be triple influence. Like, this is a very annoying effect. I hope it's not too powerful. It doesn't seem like it's too powerful, but this is always one that you kind of have to keep an eye on, because it's definitely quite good in control lists, and I'm curious to see exactly how far it goes. It's great. Big Control is very happy with this one, so with aggro getting a lot of interesting tools, Rejection has like a good like sort of counter control list to sort of keep the bigger, more scary decks in check. Okay, so we talked about Talir's Unwinding. Let's leave Kemoh for last, actually, and let's talk about our new sites. There are 2. The first is Torgoth's Trading Post, also a nice big art card. This one actually seems to be bigger than the other one. Torgoth's Trading Post is a 2 durability site, and it's time and primal. At the end of your turn, discard a random power card from your deck. Torgov's agenda is 3 cards, all of which are not cards that you would typically play. Call the Ancients, ask for directions, and Weather the Storm. Ask for directions scouts, and then allows you to, if you are playing Explorers, play that card back over and over again from the void. Weather the Storm gives you a +4 to a unit for 1 turn, which could be useful for pushing an attacking unit across. And Call the Ancients gives you a bunch of 6/6 Aegis endurance units for 2 in your deck, 4 of them to be precise. So plenty of cool things on the agenda, none of which are particularly board affecting, and all of which terminate in a Torgov. But basically what you're doing here is you're playing a 2-drop for the ability to play some very, very minor, not board affecting spells, and then eventually ramp into a 4-drop card for fairly free. And this sort of really exemplifies how it is that sites work and what they like kind of are forcing your opponent to do, because Torgov's Trading Post is a card that you probably are okay with being on board for a little bit, but like, do you really want to like sacrifice your Skycrag aggro to attack Torgov's Trading Post, or do you want to like just take the turn off and deny Torgov and these spells that are just constantly coming out? Like, I think this is a really fascinating card. It seems to have a lot of value to me. Like, I think that there's some cool things that you can do with it. The random power cards from your deck being discarded thins out your deck for really like simple Explorer aggro. If you're trying to go like really, really light with a bunch of 2-drops, then this is something that you could potentially play. It's interesting. Certainly I think this card is going to be hard to evaluate early on, but the fact that it plays all bad cards and discards like random power cards, which is not a great effect, none of those things really dissuade me. I think that like if you're trying to play this into a 4-drop, I think this is probably very good, just because it gives you so many spells that are going to be going into your void. You get so much stuff that's happening, and all of that's happening at 2. Like, there's a ton of interesting synergies that you can play with. The Call the Ancients really like increases the strength of your deck. The random power cards out of your deck increase the chance that you're going to draw the Ancients. The Ask for Directions gives you a scout for 2, which is usually not the worst thing to do if you're just playing a site and forcing your opponent to attack you. And like, yeah, the Weather the Storm is not a particularly important thing, but I imagine that it might actually see some use in a combat situation, so you can hold back on it and see if you can find something fun for it. I don't know. I'm down with this card. This looks like it might actually be one of the stronger sites, even though it doesn't seem like it does anything. And I don't know how that works yet, but I'm pretty sure that mechanically it's actually doing something important. Let's find out if that's true when Defiance comes out. Okay, Regents Tomb. The empowers your units get +1 strength this turn for 4. This one has really low durability for a 4 power card, and the agenda is Lingering Influence, which, yes, totally down with that. That's a scout and a free card, so Regent's Tomb can instantly replace itself with a Justice Sigil, basically meaning that you will guarantee you go from 4 to 5 on the turn that it's played. And not only that, but you also get a scout on top of that, so that feels fine. If you play that and then you basically just get what you want, then that feels pretty good. If you play this into a Sabotage, then you immediately get a card out of your opponent's hand, and you get your Regent's Tomb, which is something, and that seems pretty good as well. If you play this on a unit, then you get a Swear of Vengeance, and that is okay card advantage, not as good as Lingering Influence or Sabotage, but still something that's going to provide you with at least 1 card worth of advantage for each tick on Ilias's agenda. So Regent's Tomb's cards all actually do provide at least 1 card advantage. The Empower ability gives you some aggression for Argenport cards, particularly flying Argenport cards. This card is designed to support Valkyrie, I think, most likely, and obviously that's correct because it terminates in Ilias, the 8/4 flying lifesteal revenge for 8 in Justice, Justice, and Justice. Yeah, Ilias the Broken Wing is an interesting card to be playing off of Regent's Tomb. I really like that these sites are sort of playing cards that just wouldn't see play otherwise. Like, these are cards that are just maybe not quite gonna hack it as cards that you would play for 8, but these are interesting ways to cheat the cards out, and then you have to interact with these cards in the way that they're really intended, which is basically that they're fun and interesting cards that are actually really delightful to play with. We've played with Ilias. It's so much fun to actually play it out, and if you actually get it off of Regent's Tomb, then you feel pretty good about it. That being said, Regent's Tomb is one of the more likely cards that you're actually going to be attacking the turn that it comes out, because, yeah, the Empower effect is okay, but the agenda is actually pretty devastating in terms of the overall card advantage this is providing to a control list. So, yeah, this card looks pretty good. I would say it's very, very up there, probably second most powerful of the ones that we've seen so far. And yeah, it's a really interesting termination. Like, Ilias is not the most important card to be played, but this nonetheless looks like it's going to be something that you're definitely going to want to run some answers to. And we'll see if people actually start running cards like Signal Flare, Torrential Downpour, all of the cards that they've mentioned that are actually going to deal damage to sites. So Extract in particular is just going to be disgusting. I think that's going to be a 4 of in a lot of decks for a while. We'll see. All right, so the last card that I wanted to show off is an Aegon card, or rather an Aegon-related card. This is Kemoh, Aegon's Apprentice, and I just thought this one was fun enough that it should probably be last. Kemoh is a 3/3 with Warcry for 3. That's actually a good stat line. That is the Crown Watch Deserter stat line, and Crown Watch Deserter is, in my opinion, a playable popper Rakano Warcry card. Just pretty powerful, fairly aggressive, like just doesn't quite get there in the face of some of the other 3-drops that are currently being played, but like this is the stat line that is just very, very good, and not having to play an extra influence means that this card is already, I would say, above average for stats, so that's good. The summon ability is put 4+7/+7 Blade Breakers with Warcry into your deck. I don't know why you need Warcry on the Blade Breakers, those things are going to murder someone, but yeah, that looks pretty fun. So Kemoh, just a super value card, basically just really good aggressive Rakano curve, and then the 7/7 Blade Breakers with Warcry are ridiculous hot nonsense. I believe they cost 4? I think I saw them earlier and now I can't find them. I'm pretty sure the Blade Breakers cost 4 though. And yeah, they're ridiculous. Oh, they cost 3. Okay. So yeah, like basically if you get this card in Limited, you're probably going to win your Limited games. Like if you get it in Draft, that feels very strong. Putting this on Flyers is ridiculous. Like this is just a terminus for a Rakano Warcry deck that is just absolutely disgusting, because not only do you get the Warcry, but the Blade Breakers themselves really, really help out your list. I will say the one thing about Kemoh that is something of a trap is that the chance of you actually drawing the Blade Breakers after you put them into your deck is similar to that of if you had played Call the Ancients, or if you had played a Light the Fuse, which is to say it's not very common. You're not going to get these 7/7 Blade Breakers unless you are playing a deck that really wants to draw a lot of cards. So most of the time, Kemoh's just going to be a really, really good 3/3, and then like maybe you get a Blade Breaker if you get into a stall situation and you still have units to play that you can put the Blade Breakers on top of. That being said, there's no downside to Kemoh. Kemoh is a 3/3 with Warcry for 3. Like that is a perfectly adequate stat line with a perfectly great ability, so the fact that it just upsides the rest of your deck is very, very relevant, and like this card just doesn't have a downside, so there's no reason not to be excited about it. It's absolutely a really good ranked card. There's no reason that you wouldn't want to play it in a Warcry deck. I think this card looks really, really strong, and I'm looking forward to playing with it because it seems like it's going to make Rakano Warcry a lot of fun to play around with. Obviously, you can also fetch the Blade Breakers with Rise to the Challenge. You can do other things to get the Blade Breakers and play them out. If you can find anything that gets attachments that cost that little, then that's a really solid option. If you can find some ways to like just sort of basically search your deck or in some way organize attachments on top of your deck, there are a lot of interesting possibilities. But yeah, this card's crazy strong. It's all good all the time. I'm a little sad because it kind of just feels like Rakano, which has a very good popper list, is like maybe going to have just a really good legendary that they might want to play instead of like Crown Watch Deserter. But you know, that's actually there's plenty of other things that you can do, and Kemoh is not necessarily the be all end all on that curve, so I'm not too bothered by it. Nonetheless, this card looks sick. I'm really, really delighted with it. And yeah, Rakano's back in a pretty big way. I think this is very exciting and we can do some cool Warcry stuff with it. Should be a lot of fun. Okay, that's it for today. So tomorrow, if this comes out, this will probably come out late tonight, but basically on Thursday we are going to be doing an all-day Defiance stream. I don't know when Defiance will actually start, so we'll probably play something else while we wait for it, but I'm very, very excited to just basically like get into some ridiculous amount of Defiance and have ourselves a delightful, delightful time. So looking forward to that. I hope you guys are all excited for the set release. There were some really exciting cards released today, and we're starting to see more and more internal synergies. Obviously, like just a fraction of this set has been released so far, and hopefully we'll see some really, really cool things in between now and Thursday. but we'll be covering all of the cards in a big spoiler or a big card breakdown over the next couple of weeks, and hopefully that'll be a lot of fun to break down. That's it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a really good night all, and 3 cheers for Defiance. This is good stuff. See you next time. Cheers.